government should aspire to do, and to provide the kind of value to residents and stakeholders that they deserve. It's really going to be technology that's going to be at the forefront of those kinds of dynamic and progressive, not political, but progressive communities that attract residents and investment, as well as just providing increasing value for people who are already there. So this is a big deal. And, as I look at it, there are many opportunities. Just a few that excite me are thinking about some of the things that we've already been able to leverage technology to facilitate better communications, more efficiency and productivity for the workforce and in all of our lines of business. But then there are other areas where we've only scratched the surface of what tech applications can bring us, whether it's in asset management or even thinking about the integration of augmented reality with virtual GIS, with visual GIS, in order to help a lot of the traditional work that has traditionally been done by tradespersons, to integrate technology into their work, to make them better at it, to make it safer for them, and to also make it more cost effective. And when we think about how we integrate perhaps 5G in our communities and what that'll do for the faster absorption of artificial intelligence and machine learning in our community, the tremendous value that that can bring for end users is huge. And another thing that's not often talked about, with these emerging developments in tech, the core competencies that are required to have those jobs and to be in those professions are not just going to be the computer scientists and the people who are incredibly proficient at math. It's going to also require the need for highly skilled problem solvers and critical thinkers and people who are good at communications. So it's not just about having the STEM high IQ. It's also about having a high EQ and emotional intelligence. But of course, with all of these opportunities, there also comes some great issues and threats, if you will. Among the chief ones is the notion of equity, digital equity, in both not only making sure that there is access available broadly, that it's available to people who don't necessarily have high incomes, that it's not only available to a homeowner class, but people all throughout the community. But then there's also the notion of equity so that the end user can participate. All people of all skill levels, no matter whether they are, grew up with a piece of technology as their first toy, or whether there's someone from the greatest generation. Everybody is still going to have a need to participate equitably. And other issues or threats that we have to confront are, traditionally, we've always had the market volatility of the tech sector. So much stuff comes online so fast, and, you worry about making investments and they're being obsolete before you've gotten the value, which has always been an issue. And I wish that were the worst of the issues, because we also have to deal with, as we move more into artificial intelligence, the real issues of algorithmic bias and making sure those don't exacerbate existing issues. And then, of course, there's cybersecurity and privacy concerns, which are evergreen, and we're not really making much progress. And the very real issue that government's role, being a regulator, is really ill-suited for the environment that we're in, because regulations tend to be highly reactive. And with the pace of opportunities and threats with tech, there needs to be a regulatory approach that is very much forward thinking and can anticipate issues before they emerge, if it's going to work seamlessly with the highly fast evolution of technology. And if we're going to make all of this work, another big issue is how to incorporate this into planning. Arlington is known for its planning, and certainly we have lots of plans. But if you look at them on a fundamental level, technology, while maybe a feature or element of certain plans that we have, it's not really a key cross-cutting integrated feature. And that's something that I think we very much need to explore, because if we're going to be, again, successful with my overall vision of being a community that's highly defined by its absorption of technology and its effective use of technology, then we are going to have to, look at all of these opportunities and figure out how to identify the ones we want to mitigate, the risks and the threats that we can foresee, and to also recognize that tech is not just about the toys that you acquire or the new skills that you can introduce. It's about having that integrated with your business development and investment strategy, as well as the work of your public schools and educating your community of the future, and how to deal with the issues that we know come up frequently. When we talk about storm water and climate change, it's not just about building better pipes. It's also having early advanced detection and warning systems so that people can keep themselves and their belongings safe from catastrophic damage. We know as we deal with COVID that there are great opportunities in the field of telehealth to not only deal with a pandemic, but to also maybe deal with some of the issues with people not having access to health care or medical homes in their community that they can easily travel to. So with that, I'll just highlight a couple things that COVID has certainly revealed, and none of this is going to be rocket science to any degree. But with COVID, we've had to shift, and we've had to very much rethink what we do and how we do it. A key priority has been, how do we keep functioning? How do we keep the government functioning? So there's been a tremendous amount of work in how to maintain employee connectivity and productivity, so that we can really be open for all of the services that people expect. It's obviously required that we do some things differently, such as working with commissions and the hiatus that you were forced to take for a few months, which I am, of course, very apologetic about. And then the big thing that we're working on now is, how do we utilize all of the assets that we've invested in presently and that we could deploy quickly to support virtual learning environments for school children. This is not just an issue about how APS can do its work. It's about giving parents the opportunities to either rejoin or to easily integrate themselves into the labor force. This is critical that we provide those supports. We've already done some work to help with APS, and Kevin is on the commission. Comcast has been instrumental in helping us deal with some of those digital equity access issues. But we know that there is more to do in order to make sure that all circumstances that kids are going to need to have in order to thrive, not just connecting to broadband, but learning environments in their home that allow themselves to be able to focus on school, maybe to even deal with the issue of multiple children needing access at one time, the issue of supervision for the youngest children. So lots of things that we're working on, and very much this is going to be a lot more to come in the next few weeks. So I'm going to stop because I don't want to filibuster and take all my time talking at you, and I do want to address your questions, which I know are coming through the chat, or Mary, however you want to handle it.
Great. Thanks so much, Christian. Yes, yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? Questions? I haven't seen questions in the chat yet, but questions from the floor? Who has a...
This is Joshua. May I?
Sure, go ahead, Josh.
Sure. Hey, Christian. Good to hear from you again. And it has been difficult to deal with the COVID, but I am glad that we're able to gather together again and to discuss technology and our favorite topic as a community. One of the things that we started talking about just before, I think in our last meeting, I raised this as one area that we wanted to talk about going forward before COVID, was starting to think about how we as advisors to a county board, which administers a government, how do we enable citizens to have more insight into government? How do we make available more of our data, even as, maybe the machine learning piece and the AI piece is perhaps a little bit further down the road, because, we just, I think fundamentally at this point, maybe don't have some of the data sets we need to automate or enable the automation that we would like to see. But are you thinking about how to make data available to the community in the form of, community dashboards for public services and analytics for government operations?
Thank you, Josh. And absolutely, the short answer is absolutely. Some work that has been done recently with COVID to provide a compendium or provide, there's a lot of data in different sources, mostly coming from the Virginia Department of Health, but also combined with local data and information, and trying to not only make that available in a transparent way. There's two levels to this that I at least view it, Josh. There's transparency and making sure that the data that you collect is made available for people who are interested, but also that there's a utility to those data. And it's a given that it has to have integrity and guardrails, but there needs to be a utility for that data so that it helps people make decisions or draw conclusions or figure things out. And, unfortunately, there's a lot of data that's collected that in its rawest and purest form doesn't provide that utility. So, we have to constantly think about how to be fully transparent while providing utility, but not erring on the side of trying to manipulate the narrative, if you know what I mean. So it's a work in progress, but I will say that I think the organization generally, people are understanding this at all levels more and more, how this is not just a requirement in terms of people's expectations, but really can aid in governmental work. So great point.
And the only other thing I want to ask, the second thing here is, in terms of privacy, I know you all read the news. We've had an incident here recently where in Arlington, where public health data from the Commonwealth government was used for potentially nefarious purposes. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about your philosophy on the protection of privacy and what strategy you think we ought to employ to ensure that government data isn't used in a way that enables the harassment of members of our community.
Yeah. And Josh, thank you for your work involved in excluding people from the forums that they used to dox individuals who had submitted complaints to the Virginia Department of Health. This is awful. And for people who are just not familiar with it, just the broad strokes, and Josh knows more about it than most. We had someone, a local Arlington resident, who decided that they were going to submit a Freedom of Information Act request to find out people from Arlington who had submitted complaints about, mask non-compliance, social distancing non-compliance, received that information from the Virginia Department of Health and partially published a list of Arlington residents, both on, I believe, Facebook and I think it was also produced on Reddit. This is, what is called doxing, and I think in many ways that phrase sugarcoats the severity of the offense. Here what we have is a clear intent to intimidate people from not only doing what they are constitutionally allowed to do, but what they've been encouraged to do, to submit areas where we need to have greater scrutiny because of the public health issues of the pandemic. So the reward for people doing what they've been asked is to be put in a situation where any individual now has personally identifiable information and can harass, cause them great harm, or heaven forbid, do worse. Really awful, and it raises the clear. It's one of the big issues that we have to deal with when it comes to tech and tech policy planning and a regulatory framework. In this case, I don't really know yet why the Virginia Department of Health considered complainants to be um, information subject to a Freedom of Information Act request. I view this very much like someone who submits a crime tip who has the opportunity to be anonymous if they so choose. And, unless they decide to assent to their information being shared, I don't know why the decision was made from the state that it should be shared. Leaving that aside, is exactly what I was talking about before. We have to really get some new perspectives on regulations so that we're not just dealing with the doxing issue after it occurs, but we have a framework working with industry, people who develop this, working with community stakeholders to anticipate what might be ways in which this can go sideways so that we can have a regulatory approach that is not entirely reactive. Now, I realize that that also butts up very much against the very desire for freedom that many want to enjoy. But I think when it comes to the proliferation of tech in our communities, it's going to be necessary.
This is Martha. I have a question.
Go ahead, Martha.
At one of our last meetings, we reviewed a nice presentation that Jack's staff was working on. And it made an important distinction between equality and equity. And these things are coming to bear on what the school system is doing, because kids have had varying levels of support. So my question is, I think it would be very good to put that out there more publicly, that these are a major consideration. And could you share all that with, not just with our commission, but with others?
Hey, Martha. It's good to hear from you. It's been a little while. So I'm understanding you want more information about how we're taking the equity versus equality approach?
Yeah, I think that it's not intuitive,
Yeah.
and that people will be surprised when decisions are made based on that. For example, who gets the vaccine?
Right.
And I think we ought to make the discussion more public. And
Well,
I also want to know, do I press *6 when I'm done talking?
yes,
Where-
*6 will mute you.
It will mute you. Well done.
And Martha, that's really a great point. And just to let everyone know, so last year I surfaced this as a priority for our county during my opportunity to be chair of the board, and we're taking a very methodical approach to incorporating equity within the organization, working with all levels of staff and developing equity action plans. And as part of what we had planned to do when that was introduced last year was to this fall, start bringing some of these understandings and concepts to the broader community for that education and conversation that Martha talked about. So actually, you'll be hearing more about this in the coming weeks. Starting in September, we'll have some opportunities to begin that work with the community, because not only is it not intuitive to a lot of people, Martha, excuse me, it goes against sort of the way the issues of justice and fairness have been pursued in this country for a number of decades. So it's certainly going to be something that not only will people need to hear, there may be some pushback for sure. And I love your analogy of the vaccine. We're going to, whenever it comes, we're going to have to be making some decisions about who gets to be in line first. And, equity, I think, provides a great framework for thinking about the delivery of resources that, at least at the outset, will be scarce. So great points. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going away.
All right, great. Thanks, Martha. And Christian, thank you. This is really, it's delightful to have you, and we hope that this won't be the last time that you come visit us, and it won't take so long next time, right?
Absolutely.
And we will be, John Burke is later on the agenda talking about a framework. So and for the board in terms of privacy and health. So you may be seeing that depending on what the outcome is in September of our meeting too. So you'll see, just as you were talking about framework, it just brought up some of the things that we plan to focus on. So really was helpful. And my final comment about equality and equity, I was always taught since I was short, I'm 5'2", that equality would be equality would be if everybody had the same stool, and of course the taller people could see over the fence, but I couldn't. And
Okay.
equity would be that I'd have I'd have a stool that was higher so that I could actually see over the fence. So I always thought that was a good way, to teach me, especially since I'm vertically challenged. Um, you know, so we're glad, and digital equity has been one of the things Josh and Denise have really focused on this commission. So we look forward to teaming and partnering with you on that as well.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
And you can stay, Christian. We're more than happy. We're so delighted to have Raj and Diane with us, but we also know it's family time and dinner time. So whatever is most convenient for you. And there may be other questions. I'm sure there are. And we'll collect them and then funnel them. All right.
Well, I'll stay for a few minutes. I'll maybe lurk in the chat if there are any questions, but otherwise look forward to hearing Raj's presentation. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much. Raj and Diane, we're delighted to have you. Frank and I were talking about whether when we actually had the school visit the ITAC commission. So even though this is virtual, we think this is a real an occasion. So welcome. We're really looking forward to hearing. We know that your jobs have been incredibly difficult, and that you and Jack and David have all worked really hard to make sure that we get as much access as possible for the new school year. So without further ado, Raj and Diane, if you just want to introduce yourselves a little bit to the commission, I that would be delightful. But we really are so just very pleased that you were able to carve out time to be with us.
Thank you for having me. My name is Roger Smiley. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Information Services. Take care of the technology, the infrastructure, the devices for the students, and instructional technology for Arlington Public Schools.
Hello, I'm Diane Helmuth. I have a lot of roles in Arlington schools, but for the purposes of this conversation, I am the project manager for the Comcast Internet Essentials program that we're getting started here in Arlington for eligible families.
If I may actually add, I was thankful that we actually have the county board members, and it's a great opportunity to thank them for the grant that they've actually helped out to support the students. Actually, I hope everybody's aware of the Comcast Internet Essentials support program, that we are able to do that with the help of the county. And now we are actually trying to pick up the cost of Comcast Internet Essentials for all families that qualify across the board through the end of the year. So that's the program that Diane is actually referring to as the Comcast Internet Essentials. So I'm going to stop here, but I will share more information as we get more opportunities around that.
Great. Raj, if you and Diane want to go ahead and just give us what the context, and then also what you see as the challenges, just to give us an idea, that'd be great.
I can share with you where we are today with that.
We're having a little bit of difficulty, Raj. Bandwidth is a problem, I think. So we may want to. You're breaking up a little. So as usual,
Can you
bandwidth.
hear me better now?
Now I can hear you better. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Raj, still a problem. Still a problem. So maybe
Raj, maybe Diane could take the lead. You want Diane to fill in, take it for the time being, till you get your mic ready.
And your photo is still up, so maybe it's still video is still streaming.
Diane, do you want to pick up?
I'm not sure I heard what he said either. So I think he was trying to describe the Comcast Internet Essentials program, and Jack, you can probably speak up if I missed something. But the county has provided a grant to Arlington schools for Arlington to be a sponsor of Comcast Internet Essentials for eligible families in Arlington. And what that means is that Comcast has given us some codes that we've provided to families, and that we continue to find families to give codes to, where they can apply for Comcast Internet Essentials. And if they are eligible, given Comcast rules, that they are signed up, and then we, Arlington Schools, are sent the bill. So we've just started doing that. We've only been doing it for a few weeks now, and obviously we hope to sign up a whole lot of families over the summer before school starts in September. So
That's wonderful.
do we have Raj back yet?
I think he's working on it.
Yeah.
He's working on it. Diane, approximately how many, is it about 10% didn't have internet access? Is that right, of school children? I mean, do you have a sense about that, or what was the percentage before?
Not Raj, or actually we have Chris Brown from our organization too. Maybe they have figures. I do not.
Chris, you want to pick it up?
Hold on just a second. Let me do the math real quick.
Yeah, while he's doing the math, Chris, I think one thing that you should point out, I don't think we could have had a better cooperative relationship, the county and the schools, in terms of getting this off the ground, working with Comcast. It's really been a model, just sheer collaboration, and it continues. I know our librarian, Diane Kresh, was telling Raj she's going to be meeting tomorrow with the superintendent, Duran, and Abby Raphael to talk about how they can expand the support from the libraries and the Department of Health and Human Services. So we're working as a team, and it's a lift. We're installing a new product, and there's a lot of, Raj is back. I will stop talking. Raj, you got the mic?
Welcome back, Raj. We love bandwidth, don't we? Are you back? Don't think so.
Chris, you get the numbers?
Yes. So far, the number of students that we've identified represent about 8% of the student body, and the codes that have been sent out and are currently kind of out there waiting for people to use them.
Great. And Chris, what kind of gap do you think we've got? This, I mean, 8% is great. What's your sense about how many maybe left remaining?
My sense is that probably represents about half of the families in need that could ultimately take advantage of the program, but that's very much just an estimate. So
I'm sorry, your estimate is that the $500,000 that's been allocated in order to cover the entire need would need to be about $1 million total, and that's annually?
I didn't quite hear the beginning of that, but
what do you think is the estimated cost to cover all the families in need on an annual basis?
So if it's, hold on. If we're using 3,000 households as the number, that would be 360,000.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And just
So
technical question as well.
Million, so that gives us some buffer there. So that's what
Right.
I'm curious about.
Right. We've got buffer. Is yeah. Thanks, Chris. Is Raj back on, or Diane is?
Yes,
Diane's on. Raj back?
Yes, ma'am. I'm back on. Sorry for the
Excellent.
trouble.
No, Listen, Raj, of all the places that you could have bandwidth to choose, you have so many sympathizers on this call, right? It's our life. So go ahead.
So
Raj, I stole your thunder. Why don't you take it over, okay?
No, actually, Jack, I hope you've given them a status of where we are with stage 1 or the phase 1. I could do that. I don't know what was shared, but I can quickly share with you that we are rolling it out in phases. Our first phase was focused on students that we already know had connectivity issues and students that have been targeted to be needing special assistance through summer because they were reading under grade level or they have been put into summer programs for whatever reasons. So as a part of phase 1, we have distributed almost 1,640 codes to families that cover about 3,250 different students. And that has been the coverage that was pushed out for phase 1 right now. And as a part of the phase 1 and as a part of helping the families connect, we've identified a series of scenarios that we are working out with Kevin and Comcast team here so that, the process can be more streamlined and kind of ironed out so that once we share the message with the larger population or the remaining families of the school district, which is targeted to happen next week, that we will be in a better place. So just wanted to stop here and see if anybody has questions at this point.
I have one.
Yes, sir.
Hey,
Go ahead, Mike.
This is Mike Carlton, and this sounds timely and encouraging. If I understand, Comcast's business model is wireline to residents. And so I'm anticipating that the economic times ahead are going to consist of a lot of housing instability for people in this income bracket. And so if we go with a solution that is based on wireline to residents, it seems we're going to be more vulnerable to that housing insecurity than if we went with wireless and, for example, connected back to, if it were legal, to a trunk that's handling data for the county. So how does this solution fit with the coming housing instability that's in front of us?
Jack, do you want to talk about that? Because we have been collaborating on that, trying to work out potential solutions. So I'll let Jack start that and I'll actually jump in at the end.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we recognize that, and we recognize that people are going to be moving, and Comcast is hitting a good segment of the market, but we're exploring other options as we speak. One of the things is we're standing up these wireless hotspots, and we were talking to the CIO of Allegheny County, Pittsburgh, just yesterday, and Holly Hotel was on the line, was talking to him, and we found out that hotspots is being used by people who are being displaced. They don't have a residence themselves, and so they're going to hotspots. So more hotspots you have, the better that is. But then there's the whole concept. There are places we can't reach, and we're exploring how we might be able to wash an area with Wi-Fi, high bandwidth Wi-Fi, leveraging our backbone, leveraging community assets. Like we're working very closely with Arlington Housing Corporation, AHC, looking at their properties, and could they be supported through a wireless thing effort? Both Raj and I are concerned about sustainability of the model we have, and we want to make sure that we're exploring any and all options should there be an opportunity to do these things. I don't know, Raj, I think that pretty much hits on what we're trying to do. We're still in the exploration stage, but we're looking at all that stuff.
Jack, if you don't mind me jumping in, this is Kevin Broadhurst from Comcast. I would also add that Internet Essentials customers have access to our Wi-Fi network, which is the largest in the United States. There's 19 million Wi-Fi hotspots across the U.S., and Internet Essentials customers do get access to that at no charge to them. So we previously allowed them to have 40 hours a month of access to the Wi-Fi network. We have now expanded that to include it's unlimited access to our Wi-Fi network. So those are hotspots in business areas or any kind of like public type settings. Now they have access to those Wi-Fi spots as well.
Yep, I think just thank you, Kevin. This is Raj again. I just wanted to kind of close that. What we are trying to do is to kind of superimpose all of the various resources that include obviously what Jack actually has covered, and also the Xfinity Wi-Fi spots that Comcast now actually allows us to be able to tap into and provide a single resource or a single place with a heat map of connectivity and locations for students and families to be able to take advantage of. Obviously, like Jack said, we are in exploratory stages with a kind of a different concepts. So hopefully we'll be able to bring forward more information to you in the near future.
Thank you.
Great.
What are the eligibility requirements for Internet Essentials?
Kevin, you're there, so I'm not going to take that
Sure.
off. Or want to
Yeah,
share
so-
that?
Yeah, so the eligibility requirements are people that are in the free or reduced school lunch program, or that get essentially any types of government public assistance, that might live in public housing, or get Section 8 vouchers, or get SNAP benefits. So there's a whole list, and I can share this with the group. It's on a website that kind of points out all the different options or programs that if you are eligible for those programs, then you're eligible for Internet Essentials. And we also have streamlined it for students that attend Title I schools, so that they would be eligible. We don't do a kind of check on people if they tell us that they attend a Title I school. We don't verify whether or not they're in the free or reduced school lunch program. So technically people could kind of get around it by that. And I'm probably an example of that, where my daughter goes to a Title I school, Abington Elementary in the Shirlington neighborhood, or Fairlington. But I'm not eligible for free and reduced school lunch program. But I guess technically my daughter could get Internet Essentials if I really wanted to push that issue, which I obviously don't. So those are just some of the ways that we kind of verify people are eligible for the program. And they also have to live within a Comcast service territory as well. And so Comcast does serve the whole of Arlington. There may be some buildings, apartment buildings, that we are not allowed to have access to because the landlord might not permit us, but I think that's really, really small. We essentially have service throughout Arlington. Where that becomes an issue is where we are in rural areas or counties that have rural pockets to them that we don't serve, but that's definitely not the case in Arlington.
Does access or participation in any of those public assistance programs potentially limit the ability, and this is my not understanding the eligibility for those programs, but potentially limit the access to undocumented people?
No, so that's a great question. So no, undocumented immigrants can still access the program so long as they're eligible for other types of low-income programs, or if their son or daughter attends a Title I school. So there is a question on the website that asks for a Social Security number, and Jack and Raj and Diana brought this to my attention, as this can sometimes maybe scare off people because they don't want to. They might not have a Social Security number, and that might scare them off from applying. So you do not need to provide a Social Security number to apply. You can simply just not provide that number, and then we call the number and you can work around that. I have since elevated this to our corporate office that manages the program to see if we can kind of simplify that, because we do understand that can undocumented immigrants might be distrustful of institutions, of companies, of government programs. So we're trying to really streamline that so that we don't disincentivize people from applying.
Okay. Thanks very much.
One other thing that we maybe should touch on, and this is something that Raj and I and our teams have been working on. As you know, when you go to an internet site, you have to have internet SSID. You know, it could be Connectarlington or Arlington Wireless or whatever. So what we've done is the teams, Raj's teams and my team, have propagated the school's SSID through every hotspot that we have in the community and through every county facility. So that means if you walk into if we have a library that's open and a student walks in and they get a device from APS, they immediately latch on to the school's network. If they're in a community center, we've opened that up, they get access. So I think that's a significant product, that's a significant effort that Raj and our team put together. And that's operational now.
Yep. That's great. That's great,
Yeah,
Jack.
Any
Question?
questions, actually, anybody?
I did preference of the chair here. I do have a question. Raj, what do you and your team, Diane and Chris, see? Obviously, school is marching. I mean, it opens soon, right? I mean, we're getting there. What do you see as the major hurdles as you're implementing this program, and what basically what's keeping you up at night at the moment?
I think the reach to the families, because I think particularly with families that do not speak English and actually speak, have always been traditionally challenged, to be honest with you. I think, let me put it this way, the outreach and how deep do we actually succeed in making sure this message is available and is shared with families in those deep pockets that have historically not been successful in learning about the various opportunities that are available for families to take advantage of is really the concern. So what we are trying to do is to flip the model and actually say, we know that because of the number of APS devices we have given, we can track the number of devices that are not connecting on a regular basis, right? I mean, we can actually say, we are now trying to say, why are you not connecting? Is it really an issue with the connectivity, or is it actually a scheduling issue because you're working or you're babysitting your younger siblings? What's really the reason that you have not been actively participating? Looking at that data has been very, very valuable with the experience we have actually monitored since April and May, because and now we've actually shared that information with schools. Now schools have gotten a habit of looking at that data, tracking up with individual students, and through those kind of follow-ups, we are calling them individual student follow-ups, we are able to now identify more and more pockets. And then how do you support them? For example, we are realizing that when we originally first asked them the question, are you connected? Do you have connectivity? They misunderstood the information, saying, oh yeah, I have a cell phone and I can connect, but that doesn't exactly.
Right. That doesn't necessarily mean they can do. Now, is it the intent? I just want to make sure I'm clear. Is it the intent that teachers will actually be teaching online, Raj, in the fall? So they'll actually do a virtual classroom. It won't just be sending homework assignments.
Exactly. I think that to me is why I'm saying this, is to say, in last quarter of last year, we've actually intentionally not covered new content, but there was teaching going on, but they've been focusing on re-establishing concepts that were taught through the first 3 quarters and where the people were below the expectations, kind of focusing on them, and interventions was the focus. But Dr. Duran is actually very committed on providing a totally comprehensive and instructional experience as we open the school environment, where there will be synchronous instruction going on at least 4 days of the 5 days, with a date allocated for those special needs students and interventions. So it's a totally different model with high demand on it. So that's benchmarking that and actually trying to scale up to that need is really the challenge. I hope I'm explaining that.
No, it's very, very helpful. And we're, of course, delighted that, I mean, I'm sorry for the crisis, but this may really help to level the playing field for people. So
Mary, if I may.
Can I ask another question about network management?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Jack, did you have a comment first, and then Mike?
Yeah, if I could. One other thing that Raj has done, we've been working, we're on speed dial these days. Raj went before the Council of Governments and made a plea for District 4, Raj, I think it is, teachers. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's really significant.
Yeah, I think within Virginia, we actually fall under Region 4, which covers areas like, Prince William, actually Loudoun, Fairfax, Falls Church, and quite a few other districts. we are actually trying to ask each other to say, how can we support staff that are living in our counties but work in your county, and kind of extend the network access and the connectivity and the capabilities we extend to staff to your teachers as well as an extension. I hope I'm making that message clear. I think we presented a very similar case to the County of Gowns governments, actually at the Greater Washington region that Jack actually allowed us to present, where we shared the data of Arlington Public Schools teachers and their residences by zip code, so that they can actually see within their regions where Arlington teachers are residing, and we are actually asking them to see how they can extend their existing infrastructure to allow for Arlington Public School teachers to be able to latch onto or jump onto it. And we agree in kind of building a technical solution that we provide some sort of digital certificates that they are all validated and kind of let through the network without interruptions.
And Raj, you would show reciprocity to a Fairfax teacher living in Arlington, correct?
That is exactly what we presented.
Okay.
We wanted to, I agree, me and Jack, when we presented this, we talked about kind of using Loudon as a pilot to try and showcase the possibilities of what could be done when both the organizations agree and kind of share the certificates and actually accept that kind of model. So I'm working with my colleague in Loudoun County Public Schools to actually do a dry run with this particular model.
Wow. Okay. Mike, you had a question?
Yeah, and I'll say it's sort of a background question, and the question is about network management in the county, and that is, I'm assuming, perhaps incorrectly, that sort of Jack manages a network, Raj manages a network, perhaps someone in the police department manages a network, and I don't know how many other people have network operating systems in the county. So the first question is there any uniform network management in the county? And then to what extent is there an opportunity to share capacity? So for example, I would say, and I'm just speculating here, back in March when the school system went online, Raj was desperately short of capacity with remote access. And Jack might have had extra at the time. And then as the county staff starts moving back into the buildings, maybe Jack has some extra capacity. But I'm curious, what is the highest level management of networks in the county? Is it really unified, or is it divided by departments? And to what extent can capacity be shared across those network domains?
Jack, you want to take a shot at this and I'll jump
Yeah, I
on?
don't know. We got our experts here. I was going to look. Is Chris still on the line?
Yes. Yes,
Hey,
he
Chris,
is.
you want to speak to it? Chris is one of our school's best network managers. Chris, you want to talk about how that works?
Sure. I guess the best example would be the fact that the wide area network that ties the schools and all the county government resources together, which is Connectarlington, is a common fiber network that the county manages. And so the capacity is sort of there for any county organization to tap into, depending on their need.
Okay. And then do they separately contract with internet service providers, or is there one uniform acquisition vehicle in the county?
By and large, we have separate contracts because our funding systems are so disparate that they need to be kept separate.
Right.
And the most important thing, I think, Chris, that I would also add is the E-rate feature. Because of the situation with K-12, we get better price for the connectivity. That's one thing I wanted to point out. There are certain opportunities because of that we could save the taxpayer money on that part. That's number one. The other thing that I wanted to share, when you talked about capacity, I just wanted to quickly raise this. During the peak times at the last quarter, we actually had about 25,000 simultaneous users on board at a regular period, or somewhere between 9 a.m. to almost 5 p.m. on a regular basis. And we've been tracking that pretty closely. And Jack has been very helpful in both our teams, actually. We have dashboards, we monitor that, and then we've always been able to kind of tap into the existing resource and balance things out.
And then do you happen to know, because I don't, are there also separate network management, for example, for the police department or the recreation department? Or
I can answer that. For us, they're all under our network. Of course, police is different because they need to have their own private tunnel. So they have what they call VESAN, and they run information over that. But that runs as a pipe on our network. So it doesn't go in. Everybody else is with us to run our network. In fact, Commonwealth attorney was somebody we just pulled off or put on our network. The previous Commonwealth attorney had a different, she was signing an agreement with somebody else to provide a service, and we've now closed that down. So it's all consolidated.
Okay. Any other I think we have time for just one more question for Raj and his team. This has been really encouraging, Raj, and I hope that you and your team will be willing to come back and give us updates from time to time.
Oh, glad to, actually. I think this is definitely wanted to actually the fact that me and Jack have been talking to each other for so much over the last 1 month is actually a huge thing. But I have to say that the reason we've been able to sustain the demand and actually being able to be flexible and I kind of point that out as a great collaboration between the county and schools. It's one of those great examples of how we were able to get together and actually try to address the problem. So thanks to the school board and the county board and Jack's team. It's been phenomenal. But I'll take one more question, please.
Right. Any final question before Raj and his team? You're more than welcome to stay on, but certainly any other final question?
I don't have a question. This is Kevin from Comcast again. I would just like to thank Raj and Diane and Chris and Jack for their partnership on this Comcast Internet Essentials program, because I think the work we're doing is pretty important, and we're really optimistic that we're going to be able to make a really big dent in this whole digital divide this coming year. And it has just been great to work with all of them on the Arlington County side and the APS side. So I just want to thank you all for your partnership.
Good. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
And we look forward to
Thanks,
seeing you
Kevin.
in future meetings as well, Kevin. So welcome.
Sure.
We know that Marie was you are in her stead now. So welcome. All right. We moving now to COVID one more time. Thanks again, Raj and Chris and Diane. We really appreciate it. David, if you wouldn't mind, give us an update on the contact tracing and what the decisions you and DTS have made around contact tracing, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure, certainly. Share my screen here a little bit. Just a second. Here we go. So a little update on where we stand with contact tracing. We actually haven't had a chance to overly talk about it. So back in March when all of this started, one of the first things we started looking at, obviously, was from the digital side of contact tracing. And there was a lot that happened in a very short amount of time in terms of applications, different approaches, things like that. And we approached our partners basically over in DHS to see what they were doing and what they had set up. And it turned into be a very manual process of how they were doing contact tracing and specifically case management. Case management is the heavy part of contact tracing, what happens behind the scenes, the nuts and bolts of everything. Once the county has received notification from Virginia Department of Health, VDH. So we were looking for solutions to help them out, kind of streamline the contact tracing efforts. And through a bunch of research, I approached one of our business partners, in this case was Microsoft, to see what they were doing in that space. And where we landed up was actually working with them to develop a product based off of one of theirs called ARIAS, which is called At-Risk Identification Assessment System. And effectively, that is that case management tool, how they contact individuals who have tested positive for COVID-19. What's the follow-up for that? And there's an opt-in monitoring piece that we've been using as well with particular assessments and individuals who have tested positive. So that has allowed us to more efficiently be able to assign case managers and contact tracers to those individuals. And then we can see what those list of exposures are for that individual. So for example, if you have one individual in the family that lives in an apartment, for example, with multiple people, you can start seeing the trends with the case assessment of there's a whole family that has been impacted by COVID. Then you can see who else they've had interactions with and be able to monitor those and track those, and ultimately even tie those up into potential events. For example, and the example I always use with VDH is, say I have tested positive with for COVID-19, and I was at a Pearl Jam concert. So you start, if DHS is starting to see that there are more positive cases from VDH from that were associated with that Pearl Jam concert, there are things that we can do to potentially notify people through a multi-channel approach, digital approach, that there's an event and to get tested. They haven't gone that far yet. DHS hasn't gone that far in terms of events, but that's something that they're looking at doing. But technically, they're able to do that now, and they're slowly working that into it. So we worked extensively with Microsoft on that. We've taken kind of their base offering, their base product that we worked with them on. We did this over a span of about, it was about 3 weeks. It was a mad rush between the digital team here and Microsoft to get this set up, and with our partners over in DHS who've been amazing to work with. We're working a little bit more with VDH as well as exchanging data with them, a two-way data exchange between RAS ACTS, or what we've rebranded it, we call it Arlington Contact Tracing System. And we've been working on that right now to get that working, and working extensively with the state on that. Some of the things that you've probably seen in the news as recent as today is a contact tracing app that's sponsored by the state that was released. I've been beta testing that for about the last 4 or 5 weeks with them. And that's an application the state wrote with a third-party vendor that leverages the Google Apple API that leverages Bluetooth. That's a state-run app. That's not anything that we've developed or Arlington has really any input. That's usually where these efforts are coming down from, either, well, mostly from the state level, nothing from the Fed space right now. There's a couple other options or applications that we're looking at for contact tracing, or really what it should be called is proximity tracing, to see your awareness of your surroundings. And from a digital side, we've been looking at a couple options there of whether we do any promotion. The state's handling most of the promotion for their app, or if there's something else that's somewhere in between to take a good look at the data privacy piece of that. So there's all things that we're investigating on that. We're also taking a look at the testing side of this, of how to streamline testing and tie that all back into one environment, ultimately handling case management. So that's kind of a snapshot of where we're at right now. We've come a long way in an amazingly short amount of time on something that's extremely complicated, functionally, medically, and technically.
Great. Great. Questions for David? John, did you have a question, or did you just pop up to say hello?
I haven't turned my camera off the entire time.
Oh, okay. Okay,
I
go
got a
ahead.
question. This is
Okay, Kevin. Yeah.
Yeah, have you had enough data collected in the Met to determine how effective the tool has been that you developed so far? Or is it still in the beta testing or something phase?
No, it's in production. We've been in production for about 5 weeks, coming up on 6 weeks now. So based on the numbers we're seeing, it's been very effective, and based on the feedback we've gotten from DHS, it's been extremely impactful to how they operate and streamlining how they're handling data and outreach to impacted residents.
So David, this is, if I'm understanding correctly, this is a case management tool that automates the workflows that that a contact tracer would do in terms of reaching out, making the calls, identifying where people have been, people they've been coming into contact with, and logging that data for follow-up, right?
Yep, and symptoms. Yep, correct.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
before this, DHS didn't have any. They were doing it manually.
They got very resourceful, so they were using a combination of a bunch of office products and things that we already had our hands on, but none of it was centralized. So they were going in different places for this, that, and the other thing to be able to pull it all together. This pulls all their pieces that they had scattered under one roof.
And is that because they just never had to run a contact tracing operation at this scale before, and so the hand tools were good enough for any of the previous outbreaks that they might have had to deal with?
Something on this scale, I don't think they've ever had to deal with, or anyone really for that matter at this point.
Part of this too is that there's really been a transformation in how the public health works. We were fortunate. We made a big purchase in terms of Surface laptops well before this took place, and so we were able to deploy them. So the whole public health staff were retrained in how to use these laptops away from work if they could do it from home. So they worked remotely. And then we started using, Microsoft has a product called OneDrive, David, right? And we were able to upload a lot of the data, the paper process to electronic process. What public health found was amazing improvement. They were able to track, they had paper process, someone would walk in, 4 people are looking at it, one person hands off to the other person, then the shift switches, next person comes in, they can't find where that form is, then they gotta go through it to try to find it. With this process now, we've made it so transparent and electronic, it's made a significant difference. Case in point, by comparison, Fairfax didn't have the fortune to invest in the devices we did, or the processes we did, in terms of Office 365. And they paid a tough penalty for that. Their processes were slow, they had to be at work. And anytime in the heat of this pandemic, if you're bringing in staff to sit in contact, you're risking staff. And so we were able to do this. In fact, Mark Schwartz did offer a shipment of our services to them if they wanted them, just to get them on a path. I'm not sure how that ended up in terms of the donation. I think they found somebody else to get the services. But this whole foundation really transformed how they did their work. And then David's application just added to the potential of it. And you've had some great partners. I mean, the key thing is this is not a technology problem. This is a business problem. And if we were just going to automate the analog process and do the same thing all over again with new technology, there's nothing changes. But what we did is they really made an effort to look at their basic processes. In the sessions they went through, and I sat through some of those and so did David, they really asked tough questions. Why are we doing it this way? Could we do it a different way? How do we make it happen? And I think it's really an example of digital transformation in a good form. David, I don't know how you feel about that.
Yep, completely agree. It was pretty amazing to go through the process, and also really under the gun of we needed to get something moved out, and we needed to get it moved out right. And not only that, we needed a good base product to work from. So we're an agile shop here, so we're iterating on this and still taking in requirements and growing this product internally now with developers we have on staff. So it hasn't stopped. The motion hasn't stopped, and we're keeping an eye on what's happening, obviously, around the nation with increasing numbers, and just making sure we're accounting for that from the case management side, and having a complete digital solution out there that really helped the business.
One other thing happened too, and I think, David, you're shy about saying this, but when we got the application, Microsoft, who was our partner, sought us out. And they had fielded us in 10 other jurisdictions, right, David? And we were the 10th of 9 other jurisdictions. We were the 10th. And they felt strongly that by doing it here, they were showcasing the product in the best way they could. And so that was, and most of those other jurisdictions were states. They weren't local governments.
Yep.
Wow,
Correct.
that's good. That's good.
Hey, I've got a comment,
Right.
a couple of kind of forward-leaning questions if I can get in.
Okay, go ahead, Mike. You'll be the last because we have 2 more things on the agenda. Sorry, Martha, did you have a question too?
I did too. I do
Okay.
all.
Okay, you too. All right, that's it. Go ahead, Mike. You get one, and Martha gets
Okay,
one.
the comment is a quick one, and as long, and at the risk of stating obvious, as long as we don't really have a good therapy or a vaccine, contact tracing is the best tool in our kit, and it only works if the tracing can keep up with the rate of infection. And so anything you can do to make the tracing more efficient is really going to pay off. So I'll say, well done, thank you. I feel a little safer now. I've been thinking a lot about this, including the Bluetooth technology and the proximity thing, where basically the technology is a better memory of where people have been than they are, and so that there's something interesting there for contact tracing. But 2 quick ideas. One is, as a school system begins to look at a hybrid form of delivery, you could also simulate this, in a forward-looking way, like to say, in the school system, who is in contact with whom? Kind of like a network analysis, generically speaking, but you could use the same contact tracing technologies to say, let's say we simulate 2 weeks worth of hybrid school, and we see that this one teacher has the potential to be a super spreader. And so maybe we want to change the schedule a little bit. You know what I mean? But using it in a forward-going way is something I think the technology could help with. It would be a pretty elaborate simulation, but it could answer a lot of questions in the kind of experimental way and not in the real-life way that could help design to diminish the prospects for transmission. And then on the, I sent an article earlier today that's a McKinsey article that suggests mobility in an urban area is a very important factor for assessing policy about reopening. And you could take this locality data from mobile devices, anonymize it, and come up with a good measure of how mobile the population in your jurisdiction is in a way that would help inform decisions about opening and closing as we go forward. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Okay.
Great. Thanks. Martha, go ahead.
Okay. Every day I get a survey from 1 or 2 doctor groups asking me, how are you feeling today? And do you have any of these problems, like runny nose, headache, etc.? There's about a dozen. And have you been in contact with anybody or know anybody? And it's the same survey. I've been taking it for a couple months now. Jack, do you or David know, what are they doing with that? Are they trying to build a predictive model so they can figure out who would be an early adopter of the disease based on these symptoms?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know on the particular. I can't speak to individual doctors. Those questions you described, though, are the questionnaires that are sent out to COVID positive individuals that we get from BDH as part of the assessment.
Well,
roughly
everybody.
speaking. So yeah, that's how we would use those types of questions in terms of assessing positive cases.
Healthy people, and I think they're trying to just find that edge where they become vulnerable. So, and it's not just from one doctor. It's, there are groups of people who are developing these surveys. I thought maybe you all were a part of that.
No, we're not.
We don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, David. Appreciate it. This is Good, and you'll keep us posted because I'm sure you're going to learn a lot over the next 4 or 5 months, right?
Yep, a lot more as we keep on working the roadmap on this.
Right, right. We have 2 more items on the agenda, so hang in there with us. John, if you would like to take over and just introduce the framework. This is something we'll actually discuss in September in the September agenda, but I wanted John to give us an opportunity to see what he was thinking and what the course of action could be. So, John, over to you. And then,
Yeah, I will keep this tight.
Okay, great, thank you.
So, as this pandemic broke, I was following with great interest all of the stories about the digital contact tracing apps and proximity detection type apps, as David mentioned earlier, in China and in Singapore and in Korea. And I got my antenna up because I knew it was coming here, and I was concerned about the implementation and how it may or may not conflict or be possible with our values. And so I started searching around and looking at various different pieces of the puzzle, and it quickly grew way too big for me to keep track of. But I came across a link that I published in the chat, and what I'm sharing with you right now, which is that Johns Hopkins has a Center for Bioethics, as well as a world-class public health school and technologists, and they came together to produce a report on digital contact tracing technologies, and more specifically, the principles and guidance around how governments should think about going and implementing these technologies. They are not a silver bullet, I think, but they are potentially able to help address kind of the easy to find contacts, where we can focus the professional contact tracing resources on the harder to reach communities. So as you can see, what I'm sharing right now in PDF is 157 pages, which is very long. There is an executive summary, and even better than that, on the website that I linked to, which I'll pull up now. There is these summaries of the principles and drop downs, and this is a summary of the type of information. And I think it is very comprehensive. It addressed many, many issues and factors and views points on it. And it comes at it from a public health perspective, from public health experts, and what's actually going to be effective, and how you balance. You should think about balancing the public health benefit with the privacy implications, and all of those various different pieces of the puzzle. And so my recommendation to Mary was that as a commission, that we look at this and potentially endorse it as a recommendation to the county board for principles that they should take into consideration as they evaluate potentially adopting, promoting, or implementing digital contact tracing technologies here in the county, both for the pandemic response and any future public health crises that we might face. So that is the brief summary of it. Obviously, there's a lot of information to read, but I'll pause for questions.
Okay, so what we're asking is for the commission members to look at this, look at the principles, and then be ready to discuss, and in September, look at those principles, see what you think. And one of the things we're again recommending to the board that they have really some of the things Christian was talking about, framework, is what John is proposing.
Yeah.
Any question for John before we move on to legislative update from Frank?
I'm not wearing out my welcome. I've got a couple.
Sure, go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
Hey, John, I love pulling in good work from other places that we can apply. So that your method is near and dear to my heart. I have been overwhelmed as well by trying to keep track of all that's happening in that space. But the question is, given that the privacy is usually attached to a citizen and the government is a party to this arrangement, but usually not the party that actually owns the data. And so I think a central question in the ethics in all this is the third party, who's not the citizen or the government, and is usually a digital platform company, are they to be trusted with this information, either in the de-identification or in the lack of retention?
So Mike, I absolutely have the exact same concern as you. And the report doesn't actually recommend or require, and the technologies don't require a third party to hold the data. And I think that is one really important open question that we have to answer for ourselves, is who holds the data. And I think there are arguments to be made for commercial providers or nonprofit or public sector providers to hold the data for and against, but obviously the privacy concerns about that data are paramount. And one of the main principles is, and I'll just read it off the screen here, digital public health responses must represent the least infringement of civil liberties necessary to accomplish the public health goal. So they have come out and are advocating for a recognition that privacy is not going to be 100% protected, and that the implementation should, as a core founding principle, take into account the least impact on people's civil liberties possible to accomplish the public health objective.
Yeah, I got you. And I'll finish by saying, and so the question really to me would be auditability. You know, because there's going to be a lot of parties involved in this. If you're using a Bluetooth connection to assess the proximity between parties for infection control, then you're going to have the device owner, you're going to have the network carrier, you're going to have whoever's running the app, like we were just talking about Microsoft, it could be anybody else, but there's going to be a lot of people who have a functional necessity to handle this data. And,
right.
the parameters and the principles are useful, but to me, unless they're auditable, it's very difficult to trust that people won't try to monetize the.
Yeah, and
that's what they do.
And they also address the question, and I don't know how read in people are on how the Bluetooth API handoff works, but I'm convinced that it is able to be done in a secure fashion and an anonymized fashion, until the point in which you identify yourself as someone has been infected. And one of the points that they make is that allowing a person to self-identify, the choice of who's able to turn that beacon on as this human has tested positive, is an important one, because if you leave it into the hands of the person, you're going to get a lot more false positives or maybe false negatives, and maybe it's the healthcare provider that needs to act. So it's really, I would really encourage you to read through it. I think they did an excellent job, and they covered off on many things that I hadn't considered before. And I would also say this is probably not the only one of these that are out there. So I'm fully open if someone identifies something they think is a better piece of work on this topic, endorsing that. But I think the board deserves to hear from us on this topic in some format. And to your point, Mike, I think using the good work of other people is probably the best way to get a comprehensive and timely piece of advice.
Thank you.
Great. John, thanks very much. Glad you flagged it. Thanks for finding it.
Should I formalize this with a motion, Mary?
I think when we come back in September, you will, in terms of, it would be a letter to the board, right, to endorse.
Okay.
Something like that would be
Sure.
great. So if you all could read that and then be ready to discuss, we'll have time to discuss on the agenda. John will lead it in September.
Yeah, and we'll send around. Mary put together a draft initial thoughts on what a letter might look like, and want to make sure we get your comments back on that as well, so that we can kind of get it wrapped up all in one session.
great. Okay, wonderful. Well, last but not least, Frank. Thanks so much, John. Really appreciate it. Frank, take it away.
Okay, bringing up the rear here. Happy to do so. And
bring us home.
There's actually been so much material for me to cover that I'm giving you the speed dating version here. But I did want to start off looking backwards to give a shout out to both Comcast and Verizon. They were among the national carriers that agreed at the urging of the Federal Communications Commission to sign on to the pledge to keep America connected. And basically, our internet providers and communications carriers agreed to not disconnect people for not paying their bills and that type of thing, in order to keep everybody. They went to great measures to really cooperative effort to keep America connected and keep America working to the extent they could. So I just wanted to give a shout out to both Comcast and Verizon for their efforts on that regard. Looking forward, we've got an election coming on, some of you may have noticed. So just a quick preview, we've got a convention coming up for both parties. The presumptive candidate for the Democrats, Joe Biden, has indicated that he wants to bring back the previous net neutrality rules that were adopted under the Obama administration. So you can expect that any FCC chairman that Biden appoints would probably support that as well. And some names there, some names are already being bandied about. There are, 2 Democratic commissioners on the FCC now, and one who rolled off, Mignon Clyburn, the daughter of Jim Clyburn, who famously endorsed Joe Biden in advance of the South Carolina primary, which sort of led to good things for Joe Biden's candidacy. Anyhow, if she is interested in coming back as chairwoman of the FCC, she did serve in an interim role as chairwoman. She was the first woman chairwoman of the FCC, in between Tom Wheeler and Julius Janikowski. So if she wants it, supposedly it's hers for the taking. Digital equity has been one of her big passions. So it's possible we may have Mignon Clyburn back at the FCC. Anyway, there is an FCC meeting tomorrow, and this one's for you, Mike. The FCC is going to consider a report and order and fourth notice of proposed rulemaking in response to remands from the DC Circuit Court of Appeals to reform rates and charges for inmate calling services. So,
hip hip hooray.
So the FCC is also circulating an order to ensure predictable increases in the minimum standard for Lifeline mobile broadband service. That's the subsidized service to provide, make sure people have coverage. Anyhow, it's going to be increased from 3 gigabits to 4.5 gigabits per month to better maintain affordability. The FCC Enforcement Bureau is requesting information on the status of private-led traceback efforts of suspected unlawful robocalls pursuant to the Trace Act. The FCC has been very active in terms of enforcement actions on illegal robocalls. So the FCC has also created a safe harbor to protect carriers that block calls believed to be illegal robocalls from liability for such blocking. There's also been a number of legislative efforts to bridge the digital divide and providing both equipment and service, monies to keep students connected, and also looking to build out rural broadband and telehealth. So it's been a big part of the stimulus efforts that part of the efforts that Congress is taking. So anyway, that in a nutshell is what's going on from a legislative and regulatory standpoint. Bringing it in.
Wow. You brought it in right on the money. Amazing. All right. Yes, excellent. That was really helpful, and we look forward to more. So I will entertain good in the order, we'll entertain adjournment if someone wants to motion and second.
This is Joshua Farah. Motion to adjourn.
I
Okay.
second.
Right, John seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think all those opposed? I think the ayes have it. All right, we did it. Yay.
Yay.
Excellent. Well
Welcome.
done. Thanks everybody. I know virtual is tough, but we tried to keep it so to 90 minutes. So we will be back normal schedule except virtual in September. We'll get that date out to you and get agenda. So thanks so much, everybody. Hope you stay safe. Appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
thanks,
Thanks, Mary.
All right. Thanks, Frank.
thanks.
Night,
Thanks,
everybody.
Everyone.
Take care,
Welcome back,
everybody.
all. Yeah.
And Angela, thank you very much for doing all this. You've been taking notes for us. Thank you.
No problem. Glad to do it.
Really
Yeah.
Have a good
appreciate it.
evening.
All right. You take
Thanks,
care.
Angela.
Good night. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.